I know it's the playoffs. I know that stuff is going to happen for both teams. They're going to miss. They're going to miss on purpose because they don't want to give people penalties and be involved in the game and whatever. But this game, you cannot tell me in your heart, you cannot tell me that this game was officiated well. So here we have Game 4 and Game 5, and you already know that I'm not going to talk much about the loss. There are a few things I'd like to say, but when you have such a beautiful win, just happened last night, that's really fresh in my mind, and that's all I want to talk about. So we'll talk a little bit about Game 4, namely the pinching. The pinching was too much. It's weird how it's so easy to pinpoint exactly where the Leafs go wrong. In these past 2 games, in fact, even the entire series, I've been so disappointed with Zaitsev and Gardiner. I know Zaitsev was injured for a while and he came back and maybe he's trying to get his legs back and his sense, but it needs to come a little bit faster. He's slow and he's making bad decisions. Gardiner, on the other hand, I don't know who in their right mind changed him from a forward to defenseman when he was, I don't know what team he was on. Why would you do that? Do you really think this guy is more defensively sound? That's the thing people always bring up when they talk about Gardiner is, okay, yeah, he makes a lot of mistakes on defense, but he is so offensive and he gets things going. Yeah, you know what? That's not really his job. Having an offensive defenseman is totally fine, just as long as the defense part is actually happening. Now in Game 4, of course, Kadri was still out with his 3-game suspension, and also Bergeron was out, which they did not tell us until right before the game. So we lost Game 4, obviously, and things were not looking good going into Boston for Game 5. For one thing, Bergeron was back, but so was Kadri. It was at home in Boston, so you already have a hostile crowd. They get to change the lines last. It just did not look good. So I'll cut to the chase because I can't wait this long to tell you they won 4-3 in regulation. And let me just say that, okay, you know, I think we have to start at the end of the game and then we'll bring it back, okay? Because I want to talk about that 4-1. Goddamn. Let's talk about that 4-1 lead. Now, I don't really need to bring this up because everyone knows what a Leafs 4-1 lead looks like when it's against Boston in a elimination game, but I will talk about it. Now, everyone thought that the Leafs were going to choke up their 4-1 lead because it's happened before and in a very horrible way in the last few minutes of a game. And I was a little bit nervous when it was 4-1, I think, in the second period, and then they started scoring. And of course, the end score was 4-3, so Boston did score after that. But let's just get this straight, okay? We won the game. We didn't choke as hard as we choked in the past, and we came up big. So I kind of want to point to the elephant in the room here because I thought the officiating was absolute trash last night. I know it's the playoffs. I know that stuff is going to happen for both teams. They're going to miss. They're going to miss on purpose because they don't want to give people penalties and be involved in the game and whatever. But this game, you cannot tell me in your heart, you cannot tell me that this game was officiated well. I don't care if you're a Leaf fan. I don't care if you're a Bruins fan. I don't even care if you're a fucking Pittsburgh fan, okay? There's a difference between not calling things, so this guy slashes this guy, he slashes him back. Okay, not going to give anyone a penalty. We'll let that just play out. There's a difference between that and then calling a penalty for something you didn't even see that didn't even happen. There was one play in the game where a Boston player had broken his stick and just released it and it went flying, and we got a penalty for some reason because it looked like, they weren't even looking at us, it looked like from the corner of their friggin' eye that we had done something to him. But of course, you can't review penalties, so it's fine, we'll take that one. But, oh wait, no, they did review penalties. They had to review multiple penalties to make sure they got the right guy for the Leafs because they did not see the play. Even on good penalties, they put Marner in the box when it should have been Zaitsev because they were not looking. So how can, if you don't even call penalties for things that happen right in front of you during the playoffs, how can you call something you didn't see? I don't get it. And don't just say this is a Leaf fan, oh, they're being biased, whatever. We won the game. Why would I be complaining if we won the game? It was still bad refereeing. When the Bruins have 6 power plays in a game and the Leafs only get 1, you're telling me that the Bruins are the cleaner team, that they cheat less? Okay, sure. You gonna believe that? You're delusional. I'm not saying it has to be fair in the playoffs or even in the regular season, but that tips the scales too much. We had 4 guys in the penalty box at one point. Okay, have you ever seen that? There's not a lot of seats in there. So for this game, Babcock switched up the lines, and I was not sure what was gonna happen. I really don't like changing lines even halfway into the season, let alone the playoffs, but he obviously thought something needed to be done, and it did, to be fair. With Kadri and Komarov out, it was a necessity, but now he really just rattle everything up. And my God, did it work. The very first goal of the night was scored by Connor Brown and then Andreas Janssen. First goal of a postseason for both of them. And then in the second period, you have Tyler Bozak scoring and JVR. And it's almost like in the first period, you have the new guys like getting everyone going. And the second period, you have these guys just sticking it to them. They were there 5 years ago and they don't want to be in that place again. Now raise your hand if you thought the Leafs were going to lose this game, because going into this, I was like, I'm like, oh my God. It didn't look good. It did not look good, okay? And I said, cross my fingers, we'll see what happens, hope for the best. But I was prepared to shave my playoff beard. There were some daunting numbers to suggest that the Leafs were really in for it. I can't remember what it was, but they kept on showing them on the ticker. It was like, oh yeah, the Leafs are 1-20 when this and this. I'm like, oh my God. But despite all odds, the Leafs won this game. They had energy, and they not only want it to win, they need it to win. To be honest, this is the best game I've seen them play in a while. Now, can we please get to Andersen, because I could talk about him for days. He is fucking amazing. Now, Frederik Andersen had 45 shots against him this game, and I don't even know how that happens. There's a stat that says apparently Andersen plays best when he's had 40 or more shots against him. The Bruins had so many chances, and every time Andersen was just like, yes, they did get 3 goals on him, but he looked good. And you notice what he does now. There was one goal in one of the earlier games where they got it. He was against the post and it went like that. And so now he hugs the post. Like, he's like right against it. Another thing I'd like to talk about in this game, Game 5, is that the Leafs don't look like they're getting knocked around so much like at the beginning of the series. I don't know if we're really hitting more, but we're definitely not getting tossed around so much by the Bruins. That's the cool thing about the playoffs, because if you're playing a team for 7 games or 6 games, you kind of get to know them and how they play and how to counteract them. We know that the Bruins like to dump it out of their zone, up the boards and out, and we're stopping those. We now know that if we're leading, they like to send 4 guys into our zone and have 1 guy sit back to defend. And if you can capitalize on that chance, you can get a 2-on-1. We also now know that the refs want to see the Leafs lose. If you watched the same game that I watched, you cannot tell me that the officiating was good. Even just looking at it impartially, let's pretend that you're not a Bruins fan. Let's pretend that you're not a Leafs fan. Tell me, was this good officiating? You've seen good officiating before, I'm sure. And I'm not saying the best in the world. I'm saying for the playoffs, was this good officiating? If the answer is yes, you were not watching that game. I don't care what team you root for, because if my team wins and there was bad officiating for the other team, I'd say, wow, we got away with murder last night. I can admit when the refs have helped us. But if we win and we are still complaining about the officiating, you know something's wrong. Kadri came back this game from his 3-game suspension, and he was a welcome force. In fact, he had an assist on the second goal. I was screaming at the top of my lungs last night. You should have been there. When you have a lead, time cannot pass any slower. Now, if the Leafs can manage to win Game 6, and I really hope they can, we're going to Game 7, and if that happens, it's gonna be dirty. It's gonna be nasty. It's gonna be insane. So I would like to know what you guys thought of this game. Also, tell me your predictions for the next game. Do you have hope in the Leafs that they can win Game 6 and force a Game 7? And if that Game 7 happens, I don't think I'll be as stressed as I was the last Game 7 against Boston 5 years ago, because that 4-1 lead thing already happened and we defeated it. Not well, but we did. And I will see you guys for Game 6.